All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Per the usual, I'm your host, Coach J.K. McLeod, and we are kicking off another fitness and nutrition-focused episode of Help Me Understand here on a Tuesday. If you're listening in real time, thank you. Today, I am going to talk about my takeaways from an article and really on the next level or deeper layer, the study referenced in an article entitled "Scientists Reveal Why Bread Can Cause Weight Gain Without Overeating." I am of the opinion that this particular article is an absolutely fantastic example of how things can continue to be confusing and frustrating, especially in the world of fitness, nutrition, health, and wellness. In the argument of does calories in, calories out actually work and all that other stuff. When I read this article and clicked on the article and then went into the actual study, I was like, man, this is a perfect example of how you can take a particular study, then flip certain things out of it to make a sensationalized headline, and then off you go into the world of confusing people even more. However, before we go any further, let me first say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that you have plenty of other podcast content that you can and most likely do consume, so I truly never take it for granted that you chose to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast and include it in your hopefully weekly listening rotation. So let's go ahead and get into this. And I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on the article itself. I will link the article in the show notes. Where I want to spend the majority of my time with you here today is in recapping the study that was utilized in the article, and then share with you my perspective on how we can use this as an example to help you understand how to sift through information that or just sift through things like this as you continue on your fitness, health, wellness, whatever you call it, journey here, and really how you can just continue to stay focused when you just continue to have stuff like this coming at you. So let's see. First and foremost, I can't remember where I got the link for this article. It might have been from like a Google News or Apple News sort of a thing. And I saw the headline, so I clicked it because I had to check it out. And this is from sciencealert.com is where the headline is. And the headline of the article says, "Scientists reveal why bread can cause weight gain without overeating." And the overall just, is the byline, the second line? My English teacher from high school is going to be not happy with me. But the very next line says, "New research in mice shows how eating bread can cause body weight and fat mass to increase even though caloric intake stays at a similar level." So right off the bat, and that's about as much as I'm going to get into this article because it's really, I want to actually talk to you about the research that they're referencing. However, right off the bat, just from that first line where it says new research in mice shows how eating bread can cause body weight and fat mass to increase even though the caloric intake stays at a similar level. That right there, right off the bat, quick summary of that line would absolutely fit the narrative that is outlined in the article or the title of the article, where you could easily say, hey, you know what, if I am part of the calories in, calories out doesn't work. It's more about the quality of food that you eat, and it's all about eating clean. And this is why I tell people that they really need to cut out bread and should never eat bread. And it doesn't matter how little you eat. I've got an article that tells you right here that eating bread can cause body weight and fat mass to increase even if you aren't eating that much. So if calories, you could easily take that statement from the article to mean that when calories are equated, no matter what, you're going to gain weight if you include bread. So there's a couple of other snippets that were in here. That was another quick snippet was, "This isn't the first time nutritionists have talked about bread and carbohydrates and their contribution to weight gain, but there hasn't been much detailed research into the relationship, especially wheat flour or into what might be happening at a metabolic level. So it says the team discovered that eating more wheat bread was associated with reduced energy expenditure, pushing the metabolism towards a state where fat storage is prioritized, even when, this is the big part, even when the calories in a diet stay at a similar level. Okay, so let's get to the actual study here. So let me walk you through, excuse me, let me walk you through what they actually did in this particular study. But before we do break that down, I want to provide you with the lens that I will typically suggest in instances like this. The question I want you to ask yourself is, what would have to be true for this claim to actually hold up? Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. So we've got this claim in the article that says scientists reveal why bread can cause weight gain without overeating. So then the question I want you to ask yourself as the filter as we go through this is, what would have to be true for this claim to actually hold up? Because I think that it's really easy to read a particular result from a study or the headline from an article and then stop there. It tends to be harder and I think way more useful, though, to ask what's missing here. So the framework, just to remind you, that I typically will jump off on is my foundational fitness habits. 3 things: eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. So in this particular episode, we are primarily focused on the eat well. And that piece, like eat well, isn't just about specifically what you eat. In order to eat well, you also, in my strong belief and opinion, you need to be able to filter through noise like this so you don't keep changing direction every single time that you read a particular headline or you hear about a new study that pops up on you. So here's what they actually did from what I can see in this particular study. So one, it wasn't done in humans. This is a study that they did do in mice. So what they did is they split the mice into 2 groups. They had one group that ate what's considered a standard lab diet, and then they had another group that ate a diet that included the wheat flour. So that's where we're thinking the bread and refined wheat-based foods. And that's an important part. There's an important part that I want to really clarify here, is that they were not strictly controlling the calories. So the mice were allowed to completely eat freely in both groups. And then what they did was they tracked how much body fat they gained, how much energy that the mice were burning, and then some metabolic markers like their insulin and then fat storage signals. So that's it. That's what they really focused on. So before we really get into the results of the study, I really want you to hear my perspective on understanding. So this is a help me understand, like, let me help you understand from my perspective what this is. This is specifically a controlled animal study that's looking at how a change in diet affects metabolism. This is not a human trial and not a long-term lifestyle study. So this is really primarily just a setup to see what happens under those specific conditions. So in this study, here's what they found. The group of mice that were eating the wheat-based diet gained more body fat. They also were burning less energy at their baseline. So that's where the headline comes. Okay. So on top of that, they did see changes in things like the insulin levels and the markers that are generally related to fat storage. And here's the part that really, I think, gets everyone's attention, is that they reported that the calorie intake between the groups was reported as similar. Doesn't mean that they were exactly the same, but that they were similar. So when you hear that, it's super easy to translate that as, okay, well, they both ate the same calories, and this one group, though, had more fat gain. So that's where this thing really starts to turn into a headline. So if we follow that all the way through on this claim, we're going to say calories are the same, one group gains more fat. So then bread, it has to be the problem, right? Like, that's got to be the cause. And this is where I want to say, like, wait, stop, hold up, wait a minute. Like the DJ Scratch record, let's hold on for just a minute. So here's where we start to break through some of the claims that are in this particular article, pulled from this particular study. So it's not the study itself, it's the article, which I would say that 9.9 people out of 10 are generally going to read the article. Rarely is someone going to take the time to even click the study, much less even actually read through the actual study itself. So let's go through a few things that I pulled that I think will break some of the claim. If you were to put all of your bread, pardon the pun, all of your bread in the basket of, yep, so when calories are equated, if you include bread, you're definitely going to gain more weight. So first thing, the calories were not tightly controlled. So saying that the calories were close is not the same as saying that those calories were controlled. So they weren't specific about that between the two groups. So that's one thing. Another thing, there are multiple variables that were changed between the two diets. Remember, we had one that was like your standard lab diet, and then the other diet included the wheat flour. So there's different variables like fiber, protein, and then the processing of whatever actual food that they ate were not the same. Those are variables that changed between both of those groups. So you're not specifically isolating bread, you're changing the overall diet between those two groups. So that's another thing. Another thing that I wanted to point out, the energy expenditure isn't fully explained in those groups. What it said is they burned less energy, but we don't fully know why. And here's why I think this matters. So in these types of mouse studies, something that I was not at all aware of some years ago and have come to understand now as I've gotten better at understanding, or at least being able to digest, so many puns here, digest information like this, is that in these types of mouse studies, activity is typically not meaningfully tracked or reported in a way that actually explains energy expenditure differently. So even if that movement is controlled by the environment that the mice are in, that is nowhere near the same as accounting for what real human activity patterns look like. So now you basically have an outcome without a clean explanation of the cause of said outcome. So this is, again, another point here is the mouse model just has a lot of limitations to them. So the mouse model, it's fine for giving us at least some potential things to explore further in the human realm, but a mouse model really just gives us direction as opposed to actual like real world results and outcomes to work with. So here's the key question here. For this to prove that bread causes weight gain in humans, here's what we would need. We would need calories to match. We would need the overall diets between both groups to match. We would need the energy expenditure to be clearly explained between both groups. And again, it would need to hold up in actual humans, not specifically just mice. And it would need to be done over a longer period of time. That is not what this particular study did. Now, I will say I'm not intending to say that the study itself is useless. I think what it does suggest, though, is that the type of food that you that you eat can absolutely influence how your body uses energy and how your body stores energy, but it doesn't override everything else that's going on with you. So I want to bring it back here to, again, the foundational fitness habits: eat well, sleep enough, exercise regularly, and specific the eat well, because information, and I'm going to call this article just information like this that goes out into the world is easily a way that pulls people completely off course. It's just, I mean, this information is just coming at you just like left, right, up, down, and every which way possible. So what we will hear is bread causes weight gain. So then what do? We cut bread. We completely change the course of the direction that we are in. And then all we're doing at that point is just chasing like the next thing. But eat well doesn't mean reacting to every new headline. It means that you have an understanding of what works for you. And when I say what works for you, that's an easy kind of thing to throw out there, right? Like, just do what works for you. Well, what does it mean when something works for you? When something works for you, it takes into account your goals, it takes into account where you are, it takes into account where you want to go, and the important things that matter to you along the way. So I may have just come up with an even like a newer or a more a refined or remixed definition of what it means when something works for you in terms of eat well, sleep enough, exercise regularly. What works for you is something that takes into account where you are, where you want to go, and how you want to get there, and who you want with you along that particular way. And I say that because so often in these conversations around what it means to eat well, folks will talk about specific diets, named diets that they're following, whether it be keto, whether it be carnivore, whether it be low carb, high carb, or intermittent fasting, or anything in between, whatever they may be following. When I ask the question, okay, cool, and how does that work with your lifestyle? And when I say your lifestyle, I'm talking about what matters to what you do day to day and the people that are around you when you do those particular things. So when you sit down at the dinner table, when you are grabbing lunch with your teenager, your college student, whoever, who maybe you rarely get a chance to sit down and really enjoy a meal with them, how does that particular diet, air quotes, that you're following fit in with moments like that? How does that, air quotes, diet fit with your lifestyle? If you are someone that from a work perspective, you typically, based on your job, you're doing a lot of working lunches where you're entertaining clients, or you have vendors that are taking you out, or you're meeting with colleagues or office people, like whatever it might be, how does your diet, your nutrition, how does it fit with those things? It's very easy. Many times I hear folks using examples of, okay, well, how will this work when it's your kid's birthday? I'm pretty sure at some point I have also said that before. If somebody has talked to me, for example, about something like intermittent fasting or one meal a day, say if they've talked to me about that and I've said, okay, well, how's that going to work on your kid's birthday? And I've tried to intentionally pull back from specific instances like that, because I'm essentially asking them, so how is that going to work on this one day out of 365 days? And that's not, the one day is not their particular lifestyle. Scenarios like I just described, where it's typically working lunches, or you tend to travel for 4 to 5 days out of the month based on your work, or you have 2 very active kids, so you are on the go very, very often. You feel like you live out of your car, driving back and forth, and early drop-offs and late pickups and games that go late and tournaments where there's like 3 games instead of 1 and all that stuff. That's really the filter that the folks that I talk to need to run their quote unquote diets through. So that's my sermon on eat well. When we talk about what works for you and does this work for your lifestyle, and it's the same filter that I want you to run it through when we talk about sleeping enough, and the same filter that I want you to run it through when we talk about exercising regularly. How do those things work with how your life actually is? So using the example again of the kid's birthday party, or when your kid gets married, or when you want to go on an anniversary dinner, like those are one-offs. Yeah. So, all right, let's get back to it, because we're going to, as they say, land the plane here. So that's what I really wanted to mention when it comes to looking at this overall study, and then really zooming out on understanding how it can very easily pull you completely like off course if you are not clear on where you're going, how you want to get there, and who it's important to you to have there when you do get to the place that you're looking to get to. So actionable takeaways for you, because I do believe that it's important to leave you with things that you can actually go out and execute. Keep your focus on the really big rocks when it comes to overall nutrition. Those would be things like your protein, your fiber, your overall intake, your overall caloric intake, and then consistency. What you do more often than not, especially in times when it's not convenient to do so. All right, so that's my recently remixed definition of consistency. What do you do more often than not, especially when it's not convenient? So I say keep bread if you want to. Just don't let it completely dominate your meals. Like, I don't know that you need to have like bread at the center of your meal. May I suggest building your meal more often than not around protein? Build it with some structure. So protein, fiber, and then whatever else fits and is enjoyable in terms of your carbs and your fats. Also, in terms of really digesting this information, consuming this information, use the filter before you immediately react and act on the feeling of, oh, snap, no wonder I'm gaining weight. It's because I've been eating bread. Ask yourself, what would have to be true for this to matter for me? And again, shameless plug for the foundational fitness habits. Eat well, sleep enough, exercise regularly. If something that you are planning to do doesn't clearly build, maintain, or improve one of those three things, eat well, sleep enough, or exercise regularly, it is most likely going to be a distraction. All right. So I will go ahead and land the plane here. My intention here was to really just, once I saw this article, I was like, oh yeah, perfect. I've got the topic that I need for today's episode, just to keep it simple and clear, because even I myself was drawn to the headline of scientists reveal why bread can cause weight gain without overeating. I was drawn to that headline, and it caused me to actually read the article. With me being a coach, then I'm going to go quite a few steps further than most people will. Like, most people listening to this episode will not read the entire study, although I'll put the abstract or link to the study in the show notes if you'd like to check that out along with the article. So if you do go through it, I'd be very interested to hear what your takeaways were. And speaking of interested to hear, if you do have feedback, comments, questions, suggestions for future topics, my DMs are open and my email inbox is open. You can hit me up on Instagram at Coach JK McLeod. McLeod is spelled MCLEOD as in David, or you can email me jk@jkmcleod.com. McLeod is spelled the same way there too. Make it nice and easy. All right, so I appreciate you so much for listening, truly, to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.